Okay, all right. I think I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Just kind of was waiting a couple minutes to see if folks would be joining in. So welcome to my weekly Wednesday live stream. Sorry that I'm not very good about remembering to actually post saying, hey, I'm gonna be on. But anyway, so if you're tuning in, awesome. If you're tuning in live, awesome. If you're watching this as a recording, awesome as well. So every week I just try to come on and share some ideas about my journal. It kind of helps me kind of keep engaged with my journal as well. I've been really focusing a lot on making art. So today I was kind of thinking like, okay, what do I want to share? What do I want to show people? Maybe something that I haven't before. So I was really thinking about kind of going back to those Inktense pencils that I really like. So if you're not familiar with the Inktense pencils, they are a water-soluble pencil by Derwent, and they're high quality. The nice thing is that they're not like, well, they act like watercolor pencil, but they are made of water-soluble ink. So the color is very transparent. That's why I really like it, is that you can build up layers, and I love kind of building up layers with that. So I thought I might do some of that today and work with those, and work with a page that I started a few weeks ago, or actually a spread that I started a few weeks ago. So anyway, so if you're tuning in and you want to say hi in the comments, it's always great to see who is out there and who is watching. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I've got my Inktense pencils. I keep them in a little pouch just because I have all my favorites in there. I do have a large set, the 72 set. I find that, you know, like, I don't use all the pencils. Sometimes I will, I'll break out certain ones for certain applications, but I find that I have about 25 that I really like, 25 to 30. I haven't actually really counted them, that I use a lot. And among those, there are several colors that I tend to use even more. So anyway, so I keep them in a little pouch, but they come in a nice metal tin. So as much as I rave about Inktense, you would think that I work for Derwent, but maybe I should see if they can sponsor me at some point. But anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over my camera view, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so this was a spread that I had actually started whenever I had cut out words and glued them down. And then I don't know how long ago, several weeks ago, in one of the live streams, I did this where I glued in these index cards and kind of helped create this kind of banner that goes across. So today I just want to build up some color. I'm not really sure where this is going to go. I do have the word impact and purpose, and I do have my little scrap paper here just to kind of make sure that I'm not getting paint through the little cutouts there. So anyway, I'm just going to kind of dig through. I'm not even sure what color I want to use, but what I've been trying to do here lately is to go through and find colors that I don't use a lot, and they tend to be the longer ones. And here's one called leaf green. So I kind of don't even remember what this kind of looks like. So I'm going to start off in sort of a more random way. A lot of times I'll do shapes and things, but I just want to get some color down. I could do that with watercolor, and just paint it down. But sometimes it's nice to get some texture and some variety with with the the pencil. Let me go ahead and just brighten this up just a little bit. There, that's a little bit better, I think. All right, so I'm just going to hold it underneath my hand so that I'm using the side of the pencil. And this is kind of more of a olive-like green, kind of a darker green. But what I find with the Inktense is sometimes they'll go down like a really dark color, and then you paint water over it and it completely changes. So I'm kind of doing kind of diagonal X marks, kind of scribbling and just getting some color down, some of that pigment down. And like I said, I could do this with watercolor, and I often do. But if you know, a lot of times I travel. Well, back before the pandemic, I traveled quite a lot, and I'd usually take watercolor and watercolor pencil with me. But if you were limited with the supplies that you could take, you know, the pencils are great because you can just use the pencils and create a lot of watercolor kind of effects with it. And then I'm going to use a nice big brush. I tend to use stiff nylon brushes when I do the water soluble pencil, and I may have mentioned this last time, but it really just allows me to kind of push the pencil around. I want to be careful. I don't want to go over top of the word impact. I think I want to keep that intact. And so by using the side of the pencil, I can get a lot of pigment down. And then by scrubbing it, I can almost get rid of all the marks, but it's okay if I don't. I mean, I might not be able to scrub out all of the lines that I put down as I was coloring the pigment down. That's all right. It's okay to have that texture. So this is a great way to kind of get something going, especially because I don't always have an idea. I mean, last week when I did this, I had a theme and I wrote about the word emergence. Maybe I keep that in mind as I'm working. And so that happens a lot. I'll you know, since I've been working on a lot of artwork, more finished, completed, resolved pieces of artwork, I have those certain themes and ideas in mind. And so the journal is a great place to explore those. So as I've mentioned before, I'm constantly kind of working back and forth. So what I do in the journal influences the artwork that I make, and the artwork that I make influences the journal. And it's this kind of back and forth that I kind of really enjoy. All right. So I want to be able to work on top of this. So I am going to dry it with a hair dryer. I do notice that if I dry it with a hair dryer, it curls, the paper curls and wrinkles even more. I mean, it gets pretty wavy with the water because this is just thin sketch paper. So I apologize for the noise. So if you've got your sound turned up, you might want to turn it down. I would mute myself, but I have a tendency to forget to unmute myself whenever I'm done. So anyway, go ahead and dry this, and then I'll add some more to it. Now, one of the things I noticed, I don't know if you can really see it on the video, is that the index cards, because they got wet and I'm drying them so fast with the hair dryer, the index cards are actually curling. And so my paper is starting to get waves in it. So what I find is that if I flip it over and dry it from the back, a lot of times that will help kind of flatten it out. Okay. So yeah, so by drying it on the back, it helps sort of flatten out the paper, at least a little bit. So I kind of have this olive green now all over. So I want to kind of build some other things on top of it. I'm gonna stick away. I'm gonna steer clear from doing shapes quite yet, and I think I'll go in. And I do want to use something related, but again, trying to maybe pick out something that I have not used so much of. Maybe a brighter green. All right, so there's one called apple green. We'll see what it looks like and sharpen it. So okay. Um, so I think I'm just kind of thinking about, do I want to kind of do the same kind of marks that I did with the leaf green, or I'm thinking just maybe kind of some verticals. I want to have some variety. So I want to have some darker, more intense areas of the color. Again, I'm still trying to use more of the side of the pencil. One of the things I noticed with the index cards is that there are some spots where I got some glue down, and it kind of resists the color, which is kind of interesting. So as I was gluing the index cards down, sometimes you get a little messy with the glue. I'm taking a little extra time kind of thinking about the edges. I try to think about the outside edge of my pages and my papers. And I know a lot of folks don't. They kind of focus like right on the center. But I really want to think about the whole space as my composition, even though I'm not really looking at it like, oh, I'm making a finished work of art or a completed work of art. I am kind of keeping that in mind that, like, it is artful. I am exploring art making. So I want to go ahead and like think about that entire space. So just like before, some water. We'll see what that does to it. Definitely brightens it up. It brings that apple green is a yellow green, so it really brings a lot of yellow into the page. All right, go ahead and dry it. So like before, the index cards are kind of warping, so go ahead and try it from the back. So like I said, using the hair dryer makes the the paper dry quicker, but it does make it buckle and wrinkle a lot more. But when I close the book, it'll kind of flatten out. Um, so I've been really kind of thinking about like, oh, what do I want to add? And part of me wants to add some geometric shapes, maybe some squares, especially since I've got squares, triangles, and circles in this strip here. But then part of me also is thinking about the artwork that I've been making, and I've been kind of creating these kind of cracks. So I use a lot of geometric shapes. When you flip through my journals, I mean, you're going to see lots of circles and squares. And I guess I like them. I use them a lot. Um, but I am trying to push myself to be a little bit more open and trying to get out of that so much. So maybe I'll save the geometric for a little bit later. But I'm gonna go ahead and I want to work with some of these kind of crack ideas, these crack notions. So I've got a darker green here. Let's see what that looks like. So this is probably going to be a little bit different than what I've been doing in my artwork and my paintings, but just it will help me it helps me kind of explore the idea. And so with this, I'm just going to kind of do a random, kind of slow meandering line all the way down. And I want to do one over here as well. So I think what I'm going to do is have the crack kind of like down the middle, but it's going to be kind of a big, wide open kind of crack. I like pushing the space of a page or of a surface and having, you know, something that looks like it goes into the space. So the way I'm going to do this is it's going to look like this middle part is kind of down below, inside of or underneath the outer part. And the way I do that is I shade, And this is a technique that I've done a lot, and I really like it. So I'm pressing a little bit harder and making it darker near the edge. And then as I move out into that area, I just lighten up on my pressure. And I don't have to be super neat about it. That's the nice thing about these water-soluble pencils. But I am really shading down a lot of the pigment because I want this dark green to really fade out. And it has to be a dark value. If I really want this part to sink in, or at least look like it sinks in, then the dark value creates a shadow. And I mean, already you might be able to see that it is kind of creating a shadow, and this looks like an edge, and it looks like that kind of goes down. But that sense is going to be heightened whenever I paint the water over it. And because that paper is kind of wrinkled and the index cards are buckled a little bit, I am sort of using my hand to make sure I'm holding the paper flat. That's one of the disadvantages of the book that I use. It has sketch paper, which is like I think it's a 60-pound paper. Every company kind of uses their own kind of set of weights and measurements when it comes to paper. So, you might get a 60-pound paper from one company, and it feels thicker and heavier than a 65-pound paper from another company. And then watercolor paper and mixed media paper, that's all weighed in different sizes. So like there's really no standard, at least that I've come to understand. But the higher the weight, the thicker the paper tends to be. So 65 is a 60 or 65-pound paper is really common for sketch paper. But of course, it means that it doesn't hold up as well to the water and the layers and the repeated painting over it that I do. But I don't mind. I mean, to me, it's part of the process. I know for some people, it drives them crazy that the paper really warps and wrinkles and buckles, or that things bleed through. Okay. All right, so you start to see how this little section looks like it goes down a little bit more. I'm going to still use my big brush just because that's a big area, and I really want to see how far over I can move that pigment. So what happens is, because I shaded that pigment out, and then also I'm trying to take the water and really spread all that color out, what happens is it really gets this gentle fade from dark to light. And it fades out even more than whenever I was shading with it. So it's just going to kind of just going to darken this whole shape, because I can spread that pigment out. And if I need to, I can always go back and make it a little bit darker too. So another issue with this paper, I may have mentioned it last time, and I'm finding it with index cards a lot, is the notion of pilling. So pilling is whenever the paper fibers start to come apart. So depending on your paper, if it has a good sizing on it, or how well it's made, sometimes it will pill a lot. So you paint over it and you'll see these dark little spots. And I've had students of mine who they think that it's just like it's dark paint or something, and they'll keep painting over it to try to get rid of those little dark spots. And then eventually they end up rubbing a hole directly through the paper. So that is something that when you see the pilling, you probably can't see it because it's so far away, but there's a lot here on the index cards, because index cards are, they're quickly and cheaply made. So they're not the best paper to be painting on. But then with this brush, it's a stiff brush, so it tends to kind of make it pill even more. But you can see how now this whole shape in here is tinted with that darker green. And yeah, it's still wet, so when it's wet, it's a little bit darker. But you can see how there's like a shadow now that goes on this edge, and that, you know, the edges here that are lighter just really kind of pop out. And that's a really simple yet effective effective effect. An effective effect. All right, go ahead and dry it. It looks like I missed a little bit right here. Okay. So again, you can kind of really see how this middle crack sort of looks like it's a little bit lower, and it's just because of that shadow. If I make this darker, if I come in with a dark brown and shade over top and make this even darker, it's going to kind of get pushed even further down. Another thing I could do, let's go ahead and try it and see if it works. They make a white. So there's a white Inktense pencil called Antique White, and it's not super opaque. I mean, that's the thing. It's like a lot of times with watercolor and very liquidy things, it's hard to get a very opaque one, but this might lighten it up a little bit. Let me go ahead and sharpen it. So like I said, I could darken the crack, but I can also lighten. So if I take the pencil, and you might not even be able to see that, maybe a little bit. I mean, I can see that there's a little bit of white. It's lightening up. There's like a light line, and you might be able to see it maybe when I get down here where it's a little darker. So I'm really pressing hard to get a lot of the white pigment down. And like I said, it's not a super opaque pencil, and so, but it will lighten that edge a little bit, and that's what I'm going for. And it'll kind of heighten that sense of depth. Like I said, if I darken the dark green with some brown, I don't use black. I tend to use brown to darken shadows. Just kind of goes back to when I was in college and taking a painting class, and we had a professor who didn't want us to buy black, and we had to mix it with a brown and a blue. And so I use a lot of really dark browns to make shadows. But like, yeah, I think you could see that, how even just that little bit kind of helped make it pop a little bit. Let me get a smaller brush and just use the water to kind of spread that out a little bit. So it's a real subtle thing with the white pencil. I could use a white acrylic paint, which would really be more opaque and really kind of make that pop out. but it just lightens that edge just a little bit. It really helps to kind of make that pop out. Yeah, I think you could tell that it's lightened up a little bit, but yeah. So anyway, um, I think I'm gonna call it quits for today. Just kind of wanted to share like an idea of how to add some color just using the watercolor pencil or the water soluble pencils to get some various color down and textures, and then to start to make and create some depth on a page to make a surface kind of recess or kind of drop back, you know. So again, it's just an illusion. I mean, it's not like this part is actually raised above that part, but that shadow and that edge really make it pop, make this edge pop out and make this look like it goes back. So anyway, just kind of wanted to share those. So anyway, I'm going to flip this camera back over. Yeah, so just, you know, especially if you don't want to carry around a whole bunch of different materials, the watercolor pencil, water soluble pencils are just great to use anytime. Like I said at the beginning of this live stream, that you can, when you're traveling, you know, it's easy to have a pouch full or a pack full of pencils, a little bit of water, and you can really do this anywhere. I mean, I've used these pencils and watercolor as well in coffee shops and bars, restaurants, just wherever, you know. So, you know, you're sitting there waiting for, you know, your dinner to come, and you know, you got a little journal, you can pull it out and work in it while you're waiting, or, you know, you're sitting and having coffee with a friend, and, you know, you guys are just kind of sitting, well, pre-COVID times maybe. So anyway, but just something to kind of think about. Like I said, just I love the Inktense. They're my favorite water soluble pencils. I've been using them exclusively now for probably the last 3 or 4 years, and I just love the kind of layers that you can build with them, especially on like really good mixed media paper or kind of really heavy duty paper. Works pretty well on the sketch paper, but like I said, a lot of people have their issues with thin paper and doing mixed media. But anyway, just kind of wanted to share a little bit of something today, and I'll be back next week, same time, you know, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. And hope you got a little bit out of this. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and happy creating.